Hi, my name is John Cornicello, and I want to teach you about studio lighting. There are plenty of videos to show you how other photographers light and how to light like they do. That isn't what I'm here to do. I'm not here to show you how to light, but rather to teach you about light. I want you to understand how light works and to have the knowledge and understanding to solve problems and how to get the results you want. Today I wanted to expand on another part of my recent lighting misconceptions video where I talked about light coverage affecting or not affecting the softness of the light. I need to start by talking about soft light. Just what is soft light? Traditionally, at least up until a few years ago, photographers would refer to soft light or the quality of light by the gradation or lack of gradation in the shadow edge transitions. Today, however, there seems to be a lot of confusion about the term soft light or quality of light. To some people, it might be the lighting pattern or the stamp of the light. To some other people, it might be the traditional shadow edge transitions, and to others, it might be just about the contrast. So I'm going to cover these three things: the light pattern, the shadow edge transition, the contrast. Let's start with the light pattern, or the stamp of light on the scene. First, this is the optical spotlight focused on the background. It is obviously a hard light source, and there's no transition from light to shadow, just a hard edge. If I defocus the light on the background, I now get a gradient from the center out to the shadow. The light looks a bit softer, but is it? Before answering that one more modification. This time the spotlight is focused on the background again, but a sheet of diffusion material is placed in front of it. Now it looks really soft, but is it really? Let's put a subject into the light. Starting with the hard focus spotlight, it looks like we expect, hard and dark shadows. The spotlight is a small light, inherently hard. Moving to the defocus spotlight, it's still a small light, so the shadow is still dark and hard. So what did the diffusion do? It diffused the light. That is, it spread the light out to cover a wider area of the scene, but the light is still small and the shadows are still dark and hard. Here are the light stamps or patterns along with the subjects side by side. Diffusion spreads the light and brightens the shadows if the subject is surrounded by light-toned objects, which become secondary light sources, but it doesn't soften the shadows. What does soften the shadow edges is the size of the light. The larger the light source in relationship to the subject, the softer the light will be. This is the light pattern from a small softbox placed at the same position as the spotlight. There is no visible edge to the stamp of light. When our subject is placed in the light, it hardly casts any shadow at all, as the larger light source illuminates the subject from more angles. We say that the light wraps around the subject, but we know that light travels in straight lines and doesn't actually wrap around the subject. It just looks like it does from the wider source. Now let's move on to those shadow edges, the traditional determination of softness. I will use the same light setups again. The spotlight focused, defocused, and diffused all look exactly the same on the subject. Even with diffusion, the only differences are the exposure, which had to be brightened to compensate for the diffusion, the shadow density, and color. The last two from the light having a wider pattern and bouncing off the floor and ceiling. The shadow edges and highlights are not affected by the diffusion. Then we have a small softbox, which because of its larger size gives us a softer shadow edge. Here are the side-by-side views of the light patterns and the shadows on the subject. Let's get away from the spotlight and look at a speedlight and a small softbox. The speedlight is small and inherently hard. The nose casts a hard shadow on the cheek, and the head casts a hard shadow on the background. A softbox at the same position gives us a softer nose shadow and almost no shadow on the background. Here are the side-by-sides. Bringing the softbox in closer makes it seem larger in relationship to the subject, so the shadow edge is softer and the light falls off faster across the face. Side by side, we see that from a greater distance the face is more evenly lit from side to side, and the background is brighter when the light is further away. Next, I feathered the softbox. That is, I turned it more towards the camera instead of being pointed straight at the face. This mostly has an effect on the tone of the background in this photo with no fill light. More on that in the next section on contrast. Did I mention contrast? Some people call images that are less contrasty, that is, having brighter shadows, softer. Here we see what it looks like with the speedlight in combination with a fill card. The shadow edge, the softness stays exactly the same. The light size didn't change. The change is in the density of the shadows. Here is the softbox at the same position as the speedlight with fill added. And now the softbox moved in closer with fill, and then the softbox feathered with fill. Let's finish up by comparing the images with and without fill. We can have a hard light with dark shadows or a hard light with light shadows. We can also have soft light with dark shadows or soft light with light shadows. Remember that softness and contrast are separate from each other. We control the softness with the size of the light. We control the contrast with how diffuse or how wide the light spreads, and the environment that bounces the light back into the scene to open up the shadow density. And then feather the light and add a fill card for a more even coverage across the face. Here they are side by side. Please make sure to check out the original video on common misconceptions in lighting and the video about controlling hotspots. I put a link to both of those in the description. My name is John Cornicello, and I thank you for watching, and I encourage you to experiment with your lights and see for yourself what things like diffusion and feathering can do. Take pictures of your lights and do before and after comparisons when making changes like diffusing or feathering.